Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Time for Masterminds. I have an echo. This is terrible. So, how are we doing? Are you still motivated? We are going into the end of the first year of for many of us, first global pandemic. And for some of us, our motivation dipped in the beginning and may have come up. For others, that motivation has remained low. And yet, some of us are also had dipped in the beginning and we're dipping again because you know what? It's been 11 months too long. But we have to keep going. We're probably really close to the finish line. Depending on who you're listening to, this could turn around in the next couple of months. So, if you're really close to that mark, what do you need to do as a leader to keep your staff motivated? And that is what we're talking about. So, welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. This is a 30-minute show talking about issues related to leadership in the nonprofit sector or for leaders in mission-based organizations. I want to introduce my awesome co-host, Peter Blakely. How are you?
Hanging in there. How about you? Rebecca, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm great. Am I awesome too? That was an awesome intro for Pina.
You're awesome.
You are awesome. You are awesome. So one of the things that I want to start with, let me click one of these things off, is how are you guys doing in terms of motivation? So I described 3 different scenarios. You could all have just lost your motivation for the last 11 months. It could have dipped. Or just maybe there was no effect to your motivation. Peter, let's start with you. How are you doing motivation-wise?
I think it's coming back. I think it's coming back through paying a lot of attention to being like really focused on things that keep me healthy and well. I think it's coming back, but it's hard to be motivated when there's no sense of normal time, when every week looks like every other week. I think that's really tough.
Yeah, it feels almost like an abyss, like everything is just this slate of, for me, it's just whiteness. It's just like, okay. And Monday looks like Tuesday and so on and so forth. Yeah.
The only way I know it's Friday is that we're here.
I know. Thank God for this. But you talked about being healthy, and I'm going to come back to that. Rebecca, how's your motivation level?
It's great. I mean, if I don't have motivation, then I can't write grants to help people find resources. So I have to be in the thick of it. Plus, I have little ones, so I have to be on no matter what, because when they get up in the sun, it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. You've really had to ramp up and help people with grants and fundings because of all the changes that have taken place in a philanthropy. So you've been going all along. Well, as for me, I have dipped in and out depending, and I'm feeling it's 11 months too long. And I'm ready for this to end. I want my vaccine. If anybody's listening out there, please, if I can move up in time, that'd be great. But Peter, I want to go back to you. You mentioned staying healthy or paying attention to your health. Tell us what that looks like.
I have to get outside and exercise, more days than not. If I miss 2 days back to back, like I just really go into a slump and it's hard to get any energy back. I think it's a combination of, we're just in the house too much. So I think we're all vitamin D deficient.
Yeah.
And that really matters. And without normal interaction, it's really hard to keep moving. So.
Yeah. And you know what I noticed yesterday? The snow doesn't bother me so much.
Yeah.
Because it actually is a little different, right? It changed my routine. So for the first time in a long time, I am actually not bothered by snow. It's like, different. It looks different outside.
I mean, what does it matter? You don't have any appointments to go to, so.
Rebecca, you were going to say something?
Myra and Renee are with us this morning. Myra, Renee, what is your motivation feeling like these days?
Oh, yeah. And thank you. Thank you for watching our show. I want to talk a little bit what Peter's talking about. Oh, Rebecca, did you want to add something, though, to what's keeping you going? Were you going to?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound cliche or whatever, but I'm typically an optimistic person with high energy anyway. So I love to go outside, and when I get out there, I just take a deep breath and it kind of cleanses and clears my mind. Fresh air is definitely what keeps me going. You know, everyone has a bad day, but try to make the best of it because we're all in this together. So
We are. I love to see those signs. Well, one of the things that I've learned in studying motivation, and I became fascinated with motivation as a result of the pandemic. In my work in helping nonprofit leaders, they were asking, how can I keep my staff motivated? But there was something I thought was linked to motivation, and I was way wrong. I thought you were born with a certain level of motivation. And I would look at really successful people and be like, wow, they have great DNA, right? They're focused and they're in it. And I thought to some extent you're born with that. And in fact, that's not true. Motivation is very much like a muscle, and it's connected it comes together in two parts of your brain. So the brain that focuses on decision making hangs out with the part of the brain that puts things into action. So imagine you make a decision, it comes into action. And so they come together. And what that means for motivation is that the more locus of control you have, the more decision and choice making you have, the more your brain gets happy and it turns into action. And the reason why, and we've been studying motivation, I think, since the late 1800s. And the reason why is because it's linked to results.
Measurable.
Yes, leaders are very concerned with motivation because they need to understand how to get their staff moving. And I have to tell you, we're all pretty optimistic here, but there are people who really, really have lost a lot of motivation. I've seen it go down, and especially frontline staff who are overburdened with the needs that have increased. So I'm going to pause there. What do you guys think? So this is why, Peter, that exercise is helping you because you're working your endorphins.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely chemical.
Yeah.
So repeat again the part about locus of control.
Yeah. Did I go too fast? Sorry. Yeah. I try not to get too technical, but the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, making decisions, right? And so there's another part of your brain, the basal ganglia, that is attached to motion and emotion, right? And so decision making comes toward the back into your stratum. So these are all big words, but they come together. They hang out in this part of your brain, right? Where the more control you have over the choices you make, the more your brain lights up, the stratum in your brain lights up and really gets excited and moves you into action.
Why gets those neural pathways fired up?
Yes. Why is this important? Because the pandemic robbed us.
Right. Took away a lot of opportunities to make decisions.
Yes. And choice making. I mean, for many of us, I'm one of those people. I wake up, I don't have a lot of choices, right? I'm coming to my home office. The Panera that I used to hang out with is gone, right? I don't have too many choices. It's snowing. So the less choice you have, the less motivated you become. And this is important. We also had someone on the show a couple of months ago, Lindsay Satterfield, who also is a productivity consultant, and she helps leaders and individuals become more productive. She has studied motivation a lot. And I was actually talking to her last night. And so she's like, you're talking about my favorite topic. I said, oh, yeah, This is definitely a big one for many of us because of the time. So,
Yeah.
how can this help leaders? Well, when your staff feel like they've lost their locus of control, or they've lost the ability to make choices, you can give them opportunity to expand those choices, right? So I tell leaders, micromanaging is not going to help in this pandemic. It
Right.
actually is going to demotivate your staff so much, it'll be harder to bring them back up. So if you tend to be a micromanager, you tend to be focused on details, I ask leaders to take a pause, to put that in the back burner, and really give your staff an opportunity to make their own decisions, have some autonomy, right? And there are places that they can do that. You don't have to guide everything. And that gets staff motivated. Go ahead, Rebecca. Were you saying something? Peter?
I think I think managers are also, not sure how to support people, given that their usual ways of interacting with their staff are gone in a lot of situations.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And so there's this author, and so I'll get you the person's name. She has coined the term virtual intelligence, much like we talk about emotional intelligence, right? Cultural intelligence. There's now a term called virtual intelligence. And there really is a paradigm about how to manage and lead in a virtual environment. I want to say this is not the first time. All this stuff you could find online. It's not the first time. We've had companies go multinational, right?
Right.
So leading virtually is not a new concept. It's new for a lot of people who've never had to do it.
Right.
But there's a lot of literature out there about that. So think about, if you Google virtual intelligence, you'll probably find the author's name, but I will get it to you in the comments before we end.
Yeah, I'll definitely look that up. I mean, some people, even before the pandemic, I noticed that some people were really, really skilled in online spaces. Some people write emails that read just like their voice talking. Right, are really good at fostering communication online. And it's a real skill set that was always valuable, but I think is especially crucial now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely.
You know what I've been thinking this whole pandemic is I hope that people have an aha moment about how valuable or invaluable frontline teams are, because it's hard on a regular day, let alone a pandemic day, right? And then we'd have to make all these changes and adaptations to still serve the needs of our clients who are primarily in crisis all the time, with a pandemic crisis layered on.
Right.
I hope that at the end of this, that we can take a hard look at how we show that value to the people who are in the front lines, because their salaries tend not to climb very far, very fast.
Right.
And I've been in that role, and I've supervised and managed that role. And I don't think that they are receiving their worth. And that's not a criticism. That is, sometimes just what the resources are. But I hope after this pandemic is over, we take a look at just how invaluable people are and try to balance the scales of that value a little more.
Yeah. Now, I mean, they've had to be so responsive and nimble and do what they do in different ways.
And we're talking about motivation, and how do you keep people motivated when they have all of those layers? I mean, I think that we had spoken a few weeks back, or months, or this is what, our 50th episode, about people leaving jobs, right? And I teach a grant writing for business course, and all week I've spent on doing research on employment data, and people are moving around. I think it's going to be that you're lucky to have us here more so than we're lucky to be in that position, right?
Yep.
I'm interested to see what 2021 brings.
Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? So I get a kick out of watching a movie where there's this weird actor like Bruce Willis who's gonna change the world, like save the world.
Right.
I always roll my eyes. Oh my God. I just can't believe that this guy who was like down in the ruts or something gets this opportunity to fly a spaceship, and now he's gonna save the world, right?
Right. What about the oil drillers in
Right,
space?
yeah. And what we realize is that it is our frontline essential staff that have held the fabric of this society together during the pandemic.
Right.
That has been so true. And thank you, Rebecca, for reminding us of that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another trick that leaders can use to raise motivation. There's some research that, and it has a fancy word. I don't remember the fancy word right now, but subversive choices. And that's a fancy word for rule breaking. So apparently we get some excitement in that part of our brain if we break rules or go outside the boundaries. You see this very much with 2-year-olds. How funny do they think they are when they grab something that you said, don't touch that, and then they run away from you and they're laughing. Rebecca, you have a little one. Do you experience does she love breaking rules?
You know, it's interesting because I give my kids a look and then I say, what are my eyes saying right now? And they just know. So, but yeah, she backs away, you know. But they're testing the boundaries, and that's part of maturing and growing up. So,
but
you know, if you're a terror about it, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know,
but her excitement, the reason why she thinks is so funny is because that part of the brain is lighting up, right? So I find because I'm a rule follower, I've had to give myself permission to break rules. And I gotta tell you, it makes me laugh all the time. And they are such silly rules. Like I go food shopping in the middle of the day. You might think, Sin, everybody does that. But when you're a rule follower, you tend not to do that. And so I love shopping in the middle of the day.
We have some comments here. This is funny.
Yay.
Myra says, going back to the email, she says, oh, that's me. That's why my emails get me in trouble, right? Her emails get her in trouble. I like that, though. She says what she thinks. That's what we need more of that, right?
Yeah.
And then Renee here says, let's pull up Renee. She says, thanks for that technique because it's helping her board stay on point, which has been a difficult task. I love how we're presenting solutions today. That's one other way to keep the motivation is to give people alternatives or options, right, Cynthia?
I mean, and Renee raises a really good point about allies like board members. You know, they're also people living through a pandemic and doing all of the things they do. I think I use the term cognitive overhead. You know, this is just taking up a certain amount of bandwidth, right? Whatever you are living through in your situation right now takes up a certain amount of bandwidth, leaving a little bit less bandwidth for things like your job or your board responsibilities. Staying organized, meeting deadlines. It's just hard, right? And I think people want to be engaged in a really meaningful way because we're missing meaningful connection. But we might also need a little bit more support than we do at other times.
Yeah, and so this is important because there's a term I wish I invented it, but I probably didn't, call check-in before content, right? On other days where you go in and you start your meeting on time because you're thorough and you get to the work and everybody's in it there. But if you're not checking in and providing space before you get into the content, you may be dealing with someone who is heavily dysregulated or just not having a good day because of the added pressure that comes with the pandemic. And so being cognizant about that as a leader and making sure that your meetings allow space for that check-in take the pulse of your staff and see how they're doing that moment and that day.
Because you have to remember, you have no water cooler. There's no,
Right.
there are no other opportunities for people to nurture the relationship, right, with their coworkers. And so I have a friend who talks about the relationship channel and the task channel. And the relationship channel is what you are nurturing when you're not talking about work, right? And the tasks are work-focused conversations. And exactly the same language could be processed through your task channel or your relationship channel. If you don't have a healthy relationship channel, everything goes through the task channel, right? So for example, if I say, Cynthia, what'd you do yesterday? And we have a great relationship channel, you're going to say, I went grocery shopping in the middle of the day and it was awesome, right? If you don't have a relationship channel and I say, Cynthia, what were you doing yesterday? You're going to think, oh, she's criticizing me over something that I didn't do.
Yeah.
Is she
didn't shop in the morning?
Right. Were you going shopping when you were supposed to be working on the show notes?
Yeah. No, you're right. I wrote that down. That's important.
More and more and more resentment in the relationship. So given that you know your coworkers are not talking around the microwave, are not eating lunch together, are not going out for drinks after work, you have to fit your entire relationship channel into these structured conversations, right?
Yeah. One of the things I've struggled with is when someone takes their live experience and just puts it in a virtual experience. You can't do that. This is a different experience. You should, and there's still time, because I have to tell you something. In my work with nonprofit leaders and staff, I'm finding that a lot of staff are now that we're getting close to what could be the end, are wondering if they can stay at home.
Well, we're never going back to offices the way they used to be.
And that's more cost efficient.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of what you mean, Cynthia?
About what?
Of what you're talking about with the placing the virtual life. Can you give an example of what you mean by that?
So there are some organizations that have had to build their technology infrastructure to support people being at home. And now that it's done, and some people have a routine, and there's a lot of parents who are choosing to homeschool kids. Not everyone's going to go right back to school. People's lives have changed. And now that for some people, we have the technology down,
people don't live near the office anymore. They're in another state.
They're like, you know what? That 2-hour commute, 1 hour going, 1 hour coming back, I'm not sure I want to do it anymore. Or there are people who work in a different state.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I'm finding is that, yes, there are leaders who are calculating the costs, but there are also staff who are asking, do you really need me in the office? Can I continue to do this from home? And so it's important that if we haven't had a chance to build a virtual culture, that leaders begin to think about that now, because what you might have is actually a hybrid, or you might stay virtual. So if you haven't had the chance, this is the time to think about it. Just putting a live experience online, to me, I struggle with those meetings or with those workshops because they should not be the same.
I thought thank you for the example, because I was thinking dogs barking in the background, cooking dinner while you're on the meeting.
When there are dogs and kids and stuff in the background, I think that's great because it's helping us all realize that
we're human.
Right, that we're human. You know, we had this false narrative that people were one person at work, and that was completely disconnected from whom they were, who they were at home. And now I think we have to put those myths to bed. When people are parents, everybody knows that they're parents. When people have household responsibilities, hobbies, everybody knows about it. And I think that that's going to be really valuable in the workplace.
Yeah, I think so. I'm putting up in the comments.
I think organizations are going to figure that answer out when they do a deeper dive into how this pandemic has affected their clients. Because if your client is in crisis and they go to your center, your organization's physical location, if it's counseling or therapy, does it make more sense for their treatment to see a person one-on-one in person or in a virtual space when we know how isolating so much technology can be, especially if someone's struggling? So I think when organizations adapt or adjust to whatever's to come in 2021, now would be a good time to do some strategic planning around what your organization looks like going forward, not just from the lens of your organization's needs and capacity, but how your clients have suffered and as a result of whatever adaptations or changes you had to make. Because at the end of the day, your mission exists for the clients you serve, not for the organization itself to be open.
Right, right. And so I love what you're saying, because we do a lot of strategic planning at Field Partners where I am affiliated with. And sometimes people ask, really, this is the worst time to do strategic planning because everything's so unpredictable. Actually, we're finding the opposite. This is the best time, or one of the best times to do strategic planning, because it allows you to do different scenario planning, and it also puts you ahead of the time. Oh, sorry.
That's that real life into the virtual. Hi, everyone.
Live being.
And I don't know how to turn it off.
That's okay.
God,
Thank you for putting the book in the comments. This is the book here, Cynthia?
Yes, so this is an article. It is an article. Yeah, sorry about that. And God, I hope I'm not missing a meeting. We have 4 minutes.
It's so hard to manage time lately.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I totally forgot my thought. So go ahead.
That's okay. Coffee time is a great place for people to come, especially if they are suffering or struggling with motivation. We're here every Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, right? So people can come to our community, join us on coffee time, talk about your motivation. And this is the first of a 3-part series we're doing. So this conversation is going to continue.
Yeah, so I thank you, Rebecca. So so we're doing a 3-part series on motivation. Why? Because
it's more than 3. We're doing a series.
4. Yeah, I don't think it's 4. But
3 plus 1
anymore.
It's more. Show's falling apart today.
It's more than 1.
You guys, we are high on motivation, lower on execution.
Oh my God, this is too funny. But why? Because if you've ever ran a marathon, or if you've ever done something where you're close to the finish line, there's something that happens where we're more likely to lose our steam, right? They did a study years ago that kids in college do the worst on their last semester than any other semester before. I don't remember the article, but there was research done on that. And we tend to do that. And so we wanted to bring it back because we are going to get through the finish line. This started because of the pandemic, and together as a universe, because we have people all over the world watching us, together as a universe, we're going to get through that finish line.
We are.
We are, yeah.
How does that song go?
We're gonna play the Rocky song.
Myra says you guys are hilarious. Thank you, Myra.
Let's put that up. We gotta put that up.
Thank you, Myra.
Edits. Thank you, Myra.
Let's do some takeaways.
All right.
Too crazy.
No. Oh my goodness. So.
Go ahead,
Cynthia. You go first.
Well, Peter, I learned something. I didn't know about that relationship channel versus the task channel. And I know that we're going to talk about motivation for a couple of more episodes, and maybe you could give us some resources, because I think that's powerful. And that I mean, I'm big on building relationships. You guys have heard me say this for 45 weeks, but it really seems to validate this idea that relationships are important. It's what got most of us through this in the past 11 months. So that's my takeaway. This idea of there's a relationship channel and a task channel, and we should be focusing on developing our research channels. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, we have to be, I think, a lot more deliberate about that.
Yeah.
I think my big takeaway is that on top of everything, Cynthia, you pointed out people have lost a certain amount of control about so many things, about like where you are in the day, about what, whether who you see, whether you see your relatives, whether your kids go to school, all of these things. And that is going to have negative effects on our motivation in other ways, so we've talked about how so many different factors are making things a little bit harder, taking up a little bit more brain space this year. And I think that's an important one. So, how about you, Rebecca?
Rebecca, your takeaway? Bye, Myra.
Bye, Myra. My takeaway is that it takes a lot to maintain motivation, especially when we get stressed and we're like, I'm so compelled to shop in the morning, but today I'm going to shop in the afternoon. That's going to be a new system, and then just continue that. I think today was a nice opening for motivation because we allowed ourselves a little bit more flexibility and laughter, which is what tends to keep us on task when we're trying to look for that motivation and stress, getting through the stress. So I hope everyone joins us for the motivation series. We had a great series when we just wrapped up the last one. So I can't wait to see what's next week. And I'm going to definitely check out this ebook. And I hope everyone gets a little relaxation before Motivation Monday.
Yeah.
Cool. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.